You guys, whoever is here for me is choosing the most interesting presentation, right? We're all excited to be talking about the legal details of a business. So like Jean said, I am currently teaching at Mizzou. I teach in the College of Agriculture, the fundamentals of rural entrepreneurship. So focusing on really what makes starting a business in rural America a little different. But my experience prior to graduate school was for a renewable energy startup, and we had a licensing business model. And so I was lucky enough to be around for the formation of the business. And so wrote the operating agreement, really wrote all of the foundational pieces that held the business together. And then unfortunately we had some legal dispute. And so defended the company and got to see the strength and the holds of all those legal documents. So I titled this presentation, The Start of the Race, because I didn't realize at the beginning of starting the startup that I was in, how important getting off to a good start was and protecting our business and our ideas that we had. So I have two main objectives for tonight. And the first is to present some legal considerations that I think are really important for you guys to consider as you start your business. And then the second is just going to be a big dump of resources for you to get started. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this is an outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. So I have two big visionary kind of ideas that I want to talk about. And that's point number one. It's two approaches to think about how to protect your business legally. And then the other big vision I want to talk about is when to hire a lawyer. When do we bring the experts in? So I am not a lawyer. I don't have any legal training. I've just been through the trenches of the legal effects that can happen to a business. And then the meat of the presentation is going to be on bullet number 3. So we're going to talk about all the entity types that you can consider when you are a new business and the implications that those have. That is where I'm going to spend most of the time. And then if we have time, I'm going to walk through some governance documents that I think are really crucial as you start a business, especially if you have a big vision for growth. And then 5, some important contracts that I think you should consider carefully whenever you're engaging with others. And then if we have time at the end, a question and answer. I also have my contact information at the end of the presentation. Okay, so first big vision idea. So on the left side of the screen, you see the variety of the Golden Delicious apple tree, and around it is the fence that the Stark Brothers Nursery built to protect that variety of apple in the early 1900s. And so they wanted to control their intellectual property, because at the time, and I don't know this answer today, but I don't know if you can protect an apple variety with a patent. I don't think you could. So they took the time, the money, the effort, the planning to build a fence around this tree. Okay, so that took time. It meant they didn't execute. It meant they didn't start selling their tree variety immediately. They had to take but they maintained control of that idea, compared to execution, which is what I am representing on the right hand of the screen with the bakery, where maybe we're selling Golden Delicious apple pies now, right? So now you have a recipe that's really the intellectual property. We can keep that trade secret. We have some other mechanisms. You can put the recipe under your pillow and sleep on it so no one takes it. So you can just execute. You can sell this. We don't need the intellectual planning. You might even have the money that you need from friends and family or your own savings to start this business. So when we think about control of the ownership of the company, you don't even need to protect that necessarily, because it's going to be maybe you and 1 and 2 people. So as you're building your business strategy, this is something that I want you to consider. Is there something you need to protect and something you need to maintain control with? Or can you just execute and go and start yourself tomorrow? And that is your business strategy that you're taking. So consider that. Most of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the execution piece. You have an idea and you want to start a business, and you're ready to go. If you are on the big idea, you need a lot of control, then I would recommend engaging with a lawyer who has a lot of experience with those types of documents. Okay, so then the second big idea and vision I want to talk about tonight is, when do you hire a lawyer? And so all my interactions with lawyers, it took me a long time to figure out this secret, but you are always the expert of your business model. You're the expert of your business idea. You are the expert of what you're selling and the service that you offer. And so don't be intimidated or concerned about engaging with lawyers. They are experts of the law and how your business interacts with the law. So the purpose of the lawyer is to advise you on how your business interacts with the law of your community, your state, and your nation that you're in. So when to hire a lawyer, when you feel out of your league at any point, it's never it's never an overreaction, but my recommendation is to first try a 1-hour consultation to see what their perspective is. Because when you engage with a lawyer, you're going to have to do there's going to be a search process for you to find one. I'll talk a little bit about how to find one next, but then you have to do a knowledge transfer, and that's going to take time and money. And so seeing what their initial reaction is to your business and the experience they have in the documents you need, I think is an important first step. So 1 hour at a time, but definitely hire one if you feel out of your league. So how to find a good lawyer? I think local lawyers are effective for local projects. They understand the region, the attributes of the region. They understand the regional laws, and especially, like in the city of Columbia, they're going to know what type of regulations you have for producing a food product, all those things. I think they're really, and they'll know the politics. I think they're really good. But if you have a big idea that you need to protect, or you want to start a e-business and you are going to do all online sales, maybe consider getting a lawyer that specializes in online sales. And so specifically your needs. Business lawyers have all sorts of different caveats and specialties, so consider finding one that fits your needs. But you might be saying, well, can't I just use the documents I find online? I Google operating agreement, you're going to get like 15 example contracts. And sometimes you can represent yourself. Sometimes you can protect yourself, especially if we think about the bakery example at the beginning, where you just need to execute and go. I think it's cheaper and faster, and it has enough benefit. At the very end of the presentation, if we have time, we can walk through a cost-benefit analysis of when to hire a lawyer. But I think that the key here is sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And that is a time to just say, okay, I just need 1 hour. I got to figure out what I don't know. And then a good lawyer will not tell you how to do your business, but will advise you how your business interacts with the law and help you make your next decision. So that's the rest. That's the end of the big vision. Now we're going to get into entity types that you can have. So the first is sole proprietor. This is going to be represented by yourself. This is your social security number. The IRS is going to recognize you. So Lucy McGowan, and I'm going to sell Golden Delicious pies. That's what I'm doing. When I bake a pie and I sell it, someone's going to write a check to Lucy McGowan. So as my business continues forward, I no longer want to be Lucy McGowan. I want to start putting some brand around it, maybe even a storefront or something, or website. So now I'm going to have Golden Delicious pies. And I can still keep that as my social security number, file my tax forms with my own social security on this current form I use. So at the end of the presentation are links to all the tax forms and all the information for all these entity types. So you can find them easily. But that is the same as, you're just doing business as, I'm doing business as Golden Delicious Pies by Lucy McGowan. The next is, so say my sister thinks my business is great and she wants to buy my next oven. And so now we're going to go into a partnership. So to purchase the oven for my business, she gets 30% of the business. She is now my partner. But as far as the IRS is concerned, we are both going to report our income separately or under a partnership, but on our own personal tax returns. So this is kind of a single grouping. There's no shield between you and the IRS. They are considering you are the business. But there was this invention in Delaware, and it's called the limited liability company. You'll see maybe a lot of businesses actually register in Delaware because they have some really cool rules about how an LLC is governed. It was a great invention because now all of a sudden there's a liability shield between you and your business. So now my business that my sister and I are partners in, we create an LLC. And this is, as I'm progressing, you can always move to this next one. So we've changed our partnership into a limited liability company. And now, so say the business burns down to the ground, the business is now liable for any injuries that happened. I'm not liable personally for the injuries that happened. In addition, the LLC will create a tax return and then give it to its members, so each person in the business, and that's how the tax is funneled. But finally, a corporation, they are taxed themselves. Okay, so this is another set. The sole proprietor, if you are just going to be selling and doing a side hustle, this is where I'd say you go. You don't even need an LLC. But there, unless, I don't think it's a bad idea to have an LLC. That's a caveat. So to set up an LLC, all you need to do is go to this Secretary of State for the state of Missouri. The link is at the end of the presentation, and it takes about 10 minutes to set up and $35. And you now have this shield. You'll have to choose a business name. You'll have to choose if it's a single member or a multi-member. It's most likely, you can change it if you need to. If you think you're going to have any members or people join your organization as founders in the future, I would choose multi-member, even if you're just single at the time. And then you can raise funds inside the limited liability company. I know that Quentin Messenberger is talking about funding right now. And so if you have questions about funding, then hop over or talk to him after this, because he'll be a great resource. Corporation, a big caveat about a corporation is that you have to have a board of directors. And so there's a whole bunch of governance, which we're going to talk about just quickly. When we think about a board of directors, it's a whole bunch of different pieces that you have to consider. The last piece, I don't know if we have any non-for-profit people on here, but that is a 501c3 organization or a 501 organization. There may be a different letter or number at the end. This means that you're not taxed, but you have to be a 501c3 organization with the federal government in order to not pay taxes. So it takes a lot of additional governance. You have to have a board of directors. So you can start as an LLC and then move to a 501c3 once you have a better vision. Okay, so this is just a quick summary so that you remember. The sole proprietor is just yourself, always. Doing business as is your student name. Partnership, we share everything. What's mine is ours, right? So if my business was to burn to the ground and it was all my fault, my partners are still liable just as I am, specifically in the amount of ownership they have. And yeah, okay, so then the limited liability company or the LLC that you pretty much see tons of businesses, that is going to put a shield between you and your business. And then the corporation now becomes a separate entity that is considered an entity by the government, and then a 501c3, which is a nonprofit. Okay, so what is governance? I've been throwing that word around a little bit, specifically as it relates to a board of directors. Well, governance is just a whole bunch of documents, and they can be in different forms, and there's no like list of these, you must have these documents to be an organization. But generally, they are the rules that govern your business, and they have a special job of allocating the value. So they will allocate the money that you make. They'll allocate who gets to make the decisions, the decision-making rights, and who bears the risk. So if me and my sister are in a business, the governance documents in whatever names they have will tell who gets how much money at the end of the day, who gets to make what decisions, who gets to file for bankruptcy, who gets to raise money, who gets to make sales larger than $50,000, who gets the commissions, who gets to sit in the front office. As granular of as those decisions that you need to show. And then the risk. So if it burns to the ground, who's put on the line to pay it back? All those things. The role of the CEO can be in this document. So here's some of the types of governance that we'll see. Articles of incorporation are created when you go to the Secretary of State and found an LLC or a partnership. So that is something that the state generates. It's very simple, and it's what you pay the $35 for. Founders agreement does exactly what I just said. It allocates the value, decision rights, and risk of the founding team. When you have a first round financing outside of that founding team, you're going to need a financing document. Then that's governed by the SEC. At this point, the founder agreement you can probably do without a lawyer if it's just a small group. But you may need a lawyer to help mediate as you guys are negotiating. But first round financing, those are actually governed typically by the SEC. And so this is a time where you would definitely have counsel come in. An operating agreement, again, so if we think about a founder's agreement, it's just a version of an operating agreement, but operating agreement is what it'll be called when the larger group comes in. The board of directors will have a set of rules that typically is called governance. But then the last one that is separate from this governance, as we've been talking about, is a non-disclosure agreement. So if you have an idea that you want to share with someone, so I have my apple pie recipe and you've asked for it. I would love to give it to you, but I don't want you to share it with anyone. So I can make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, often called an NDA, and that typically has a lifespan of 1 to 5 years, and it gives the terms of what you can share with of what I share you. So it may say you may never share, or for 5 years, you may never sell anyone the amount of cinnamon in my apple pie recipe. And of course you could do that. But if I found out that you did, I would have the right to take you to court and sue you for the value that I lost for other people knowing how much cinnamon. Okay, so very quickly, here's just some general types of contracts that I think were important to talk about. Standard contracts that you sign with other entities to buy and sell. I think typically those are pretty boilerplate and you can go on. Employment contracts, these are some contracts that you may need some help drafting or writing or specific principles in there. And then the special purpose entities. So if you start to open subsidiaries, all of this governance still pertains, all this LLC, all the entity type still pertains. And so you have to think about that big strategy like I talked on the first slide. What do you need control over? What do you need to protect? And what can you just go ahead and execute without that protection? So I will open up the chat and stop sharing for question and answers. But I do have a question that I just wanted to ask while you guys thought about it real quick. When do you get an employment identification number? So you may have heard of an EIN. It's also a federal tax identification number or a federal tax ID. And you need one when you create a partnership or an LLC for the most part, or if you have employees. And sometimes banks require them when you get one. It is just a generative, it's a part of being another entity of being a business. So let me move so I can see the chat. I can't see it yet. Stop share maybe. There we go. Okay, are there any questions? Also, you can unmute yourself. We have like 2 minutes, so not much time at all. Sorry. Okay. How can I file S Corp? I have a drop shipping business and I really need to set up an LLC or an S Corp. Okay, so an LLC is really simple. An S Corp is going to require a board of directors. And so unless you have access and are ready to assign a group board of directors, I would recommend an LLC. And you can do that through the state of Missouri. It should, since you're currently living here or doing business in Missouri, I think it's fine even with the international sales. So you can do that through the Secretary of State. So for standard contracts, there's a ton of databases of standard contracts, Kylie, for you to look at, and I've linked those at the end of the presentation. If you'll send me an email, I'll put my email in the chat, and I can send you those databases. Oh, sorry, I sent that privately.
Lucy, we'll be sending your email.
Okay, perfect. Well, there's a whole bunch of databases for you to look at for standard contracts that you can look at. No, you do not need an employment identification number if you have no employees or an LLC. You do not have a physical business, so you don't have like a storefront. I would say yes, you need an LLC if you're doing international sales. Yes, you can have as many identification numbers, a person can have as many as they need for the businesses that they have. You've mentioned being able to go from an LLC to a 501c3 once your mission is more defined. Can you do the same from a sole proprietorship? Yes, you can do the same from a sole proprietorship. So all an LLC is going to do is it's going to put a shield between you and the government, essentially. And so as a sole proprietor, yeah, you can, once you have the mission defined and a board of directors named, yes, you can move through.